Hello. This week I want to continue on with fact or fantasy concerning land ownership, and especially in regard to events that led up to the Six-Day War in June 1967. At that time, the fiction was that Israel's military strike against Egypt was unprovoked. The fact of the matter was that Israel was really defending itself against repeated international aggression. For example, in the first 4 months of 1967, there were 37 attacks launched against Israel by Syria and Egypt, including the blockade of the port of Eilat in May 1967, which cut off Israel's main oil supply. In the months leading up to this confrontation, Israel in 1967 had to contend with aggression on 3 fronts. The fact of the matter was that Israel was outnumbered by 20-1 by the Arab bloc. Syria and Egypt were backed massively by the Soviet Union. The Soviets at that time were positioning themselves to have influence in the Middle East because of the oil supply. They wanted to have access to this huge power in the world economy. The immensely powerful Soviet naval fleet was also in the Mediterranean, and they were reported to have nuclear warheads on board their ships, which were some of the most powerful in the world, including the latest submarines. So the key question is, how did little Israel win this war so decisively against such odds? History shows that Israel actually won the entire Six-Day War in the first 3 hours of the battle by the lightning airstrike of the Israeli Air Force in Egypt. Israel's military and strategic planning was precise, and the execution of these plans was near perfect. Early on the morning of June 5th, Israel destroyed 11 air bases in Egypt, along with most of the Egyptian Air Force on the ground. Also destroyed was the air forces of Jordan and Syria in simultaneous strikes. The Israelis flew in low to avoid enemy radar and immediately hit all 11 air bases at exactly the same time. They encountered virtually no resistance, as most of the pilots were having breakfast at the time. Then, with complete air superiority, the Israeli army routed the Arab armies, and by the time the ceasefire occurred on June the 10th, Jordan had lost the West Bank, Syria, the Golan Heights, and Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula. Next week, I want to investigate the unusual events that happened in Jerusalem during the Six-Day War. You might say the Lord intervened over His holy city. This is Dr. Jay Rawlings with Fact or Fantasy. See you then.